What is going on, y'all? Welcome to the Mission Ready Men briefing right here on the SHR Media Network, where we are training up warriors, not weaklings. Today is Thursday, December 11th, in the year of our Lord 2025. December is almost half over. Christmas is here, y'all. So we will obviously talk about that at some point, but this is where we come to get equipped to stand firm, speak truth, and fight back against a culture that is trying to steal your faith, your family, and your freedom. This is a spiritual battle, folks. It is not just political. And this fight never takes a day off. So we are done pulling punches. The gloves are off, and we are getting after it. So be sure to follow us at Mission Ready Men on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Getter, Truth Social, TikTok, and also be sure to follow us and subscribe to our Facebook and YouTube channels. And if you want to wear the fight, like this We the People t-shirt, head over to missionreadymen.com and grab your gear. And check out all of those great designs like this one that I'm wearing today. All right, y'all. Business is done, so it's go time. So I didn't think I would actually be talking about this a lot, but apparently it's everywhere. So I feel like I have to address it some more. And I'm talking about Jazzy, Jasmine Ratchet, Jasmine Crockett, who is running for Senate from the great state of Texas. And I wrote an article up on SHR Media. If TikTok ran a Senate race, it would look exactly like Jasmine Crockett. And conventional wisdom says that she has no shot. Every conservative pundit that I pay attention to says that she is cooked. She has no shot. And her first few days launching this campaign have been a complete train wreck. I acknowledge that. It has been it has been entertaining. It has been entertaining, and the next year promises to be just as entertaining. But we have a year. Anything can happen, and like I said, she's had a rocky start, a rough few days. And I want to take a look at a couple of things, and then we'll get into why I have the position I have. So let's let's get into this real quick. If I can, I thought I had this all ready to go. There we go. So I'm sure you've all seen this before, and this is Jake Tapper confronting her with some of her own words.
Let me tell you, let me ask you about a quote that you've made that has some Democrats worried about your ability to win statewide. In a December 2024 Vanity Fair profile, you talked about, quote, and I'm going to read a lot of the quote just to put it in the context, quote, all the complexities within the Latino community. The immigration thing has always been something that has perplexed me about this community. It's basically like, I fought to get here, but I left y'all where I left y'all, and I want no more y'all to come here. If I wanted to be with y'all, I would stay with y'all, but I don't want y'all coming to my new home. It almost reminds me of what people would talk about when they would talk about kind of like slave.
Is it jarring for anyone else to hear Jake Tapper say y'all so many times? He sounds completely out of his element saying it too. It's actually quite hilarious.
Mentality and the hate that some slaves would have for themselves. It's almost like a slave mentality that they have. Now, about the time that that was published last year, around 1 million Latino voters in Texas were voting for Trump. Do they all have slave mentality?
No, and that's not what that said at all.
He just read your words right back to you. That is exactly what you said.
Clear. It did not say that every Latino has that type of mentality.
No, but the ones that vote for people who believe in strong or Trump's immigration policies.
So I don't believe that the people that voted for Trump believe in what they're actually getting.
So we're retards. Is that what you're saying? Because that's what it sounded like to me.
That is number one. What Trump said is that he was going to kick out the bad guys. And that's what I was talking about. I've been down to the border. I've been down to South.
All right. She launches into a Kamala-esque word salad there, which not particularly interested in hearing again. You can check it out for yourself. But so she shot herself in the foot there. He gave her an opportunity to clean it up, and she made it even worse. So she is, like I said, off to a horrible, horrible start. I'm not going to play I'm not going to play her campaign launch ad, but it's basically Trump going full Trump on her, calling her low IQ, just you name it. And it's all true. And I used to be of the opinion that she wasn't as dumb as she came across. This campaign kickoff is making me reevaluate that position, because what she says here that we're going to listen to just completely makes her seem like a moron.
Your official announcement is just a video of you, an image of you, while insults of President Trump of you play in the background. Why that decision? I mean, one of your opponents, Tallarico, he had a video, him with constituents, him with Texans. Why you solo?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. Number one, I wanted to do something different. Because number one, in order to flip the state of Texas, we're going to have to do something that we've never done. So I wanted to stay on brand with the fact that we would be different. I also wanted people to understand who the president sees as a real threat, and it is me. He also made it clear a number of times that he sees me as a leader. Those were his words, not mine.
I don't know about you, but if I think someone is stupid, if I think they are of a low IQ, I don't consider that person a threat in any way, except maybe to my own intelligence, because hanging around them might make me dumber by osmosis. I don't know. But she really believes that because President Trump says these things about her, that he thinks she's a threat. Now, if she believes that, she is an idiot. She is a complete idiot, dumber than I ever thought she really was. Wow. So, yeah. and I found this out after I wrote that article, that there are reports that Republicans basically duped her into thinking she could win and running for the Senate. There's a story up on Daily Caller where they saw, well, let's take a look at it real quick. Republicans tricked Jasmine Crockett into running for Senate. That to me is hilarious. The National Republican Senate Committee began including Crockett's name in polling in July, the Daily Caller News Foundation reported, and it showed her leading in a hypothetical Democratic primary race. And since then, the NRSC has been working behind the scenes to get Crockett to jump into the Democrat primary, according to a Tuesday notice report. They said, we saw the results and we were like, oh, we got to disseminate this far and wide. And she fell for it. Now, I think her ego is such that she probably still believes she can win, even in light of this information. Having said all of that, having said she was tricked into running, having said she's stupid, having said that she's had a really rocky start to her campaign, it is, to me, not a foregone conclusion. I don't think she's going to win. I just want to make that clear. I don't think she's going to win. But Republicans have a long and storied history of being complacent, of being saying because this is a red state, because we're in a red district, we got this. We don't have to campaign that hard. We don't have to mobilize to get out the vote. It's all good. We have seen recently a wave of Democrats winning in special elections, off-year elections, and I talked about it last time. And Trump is not on the ballot anymore. His policies are, but he's not. His personality is not. He's going to have to get out there and campaign for some of these people. And having these leftists run these campaigns, be in these campaigns, it's just like with Wendy Patrick in Texas back, I think, in 2012 or 2013. She was laying the groundwork. She didn't have a realistic shot at winning, but she laid the groundwork for future endeavors, like I said in my article. And we saw how close Afton Bain came. Miami just elected a Democrat mayor for the first time in almost 30 years, 28 years, I believe. So don't get complacent. Don't think just because she's a moron, because she's running a terrible campaign at the start, that this is a foregone conclusion. It's not. And I'm not saying I'm right and everyone else who says that she's got no shot, that she's cooked, is wrong. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is be careful and don't be complacent. There's many a slip twixt the cup and the lip. And if you get that reference, we can be friends. But yeah, she's a terrible she's a terrible candidate. She's running a terrible campaign to start. And the Republicans, as I often say, have a real talent for snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. They never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And any other cliches you want to toss out there, that is the Republicans' MO. And we're actually going to talk about the Miami mayoral race a little later, but actually we're going to talk about that next, because it's shaping up to be, if we're not careful, it's shaping up to be a disaster for the next couple of years. All right, we got some chats I want to catch up on. Thank you all for being here. Canada Heavy Hall is in the chat. Thanks for being here. My good friend Sackhead Sean is in the chat. Who else? O2AMT, thank you for being here. Sackhead Sean says they could mess up a free lunch and end up owing money on it. Yes, that is 100% correct. And yes, it's not about the Republicans, good one, being complacent. It's about what some call the uniparty. There has been little difference between the Democrats and Republicans for over 30 years. I would suggest it goes back even further than that. And I've made that point myself, that there is functionally very little difference between a lot of Republicans in these offices and Democrats. A lot of times they run as Republicans in Republican districts because it's the path of least resistance. You are absolutely right. Sackhead Sean talking about old Jazzy, jazz hands. She's like trailer trash going on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and doesn't realize she's underwater. This is also true. But again, we can't be complacent because, as I said, Miami just elected a Democrat mayor for the first time in 27 or 28 years. And Florida is a ruby red state. Florida has been doing some great things, but Ron DeSantis is term limited out. And Byron Donalds is running for governor, and I think he would be just as good a governor as DeSantis has been. But I think there are something like 180,000 eligible voters in the city of Miami. 37,000 votes were cast. And it was a runoff, but I think even in the general election, the original election in November, I think there were only like 36 or 37,000 votes cast. That's ridiculous. And that is a sign of complacency. That is a sign that they think they're just going to coast on their reputation, just like Texas has for a long time. And some of the same things are happening in Texas and in Florida. There's an effort by Islamists to Islamify those states. And it's it could be a disaster. It could be a disaster if we let it. And excuse me. Sorry about that. It could be a disaster. And I found this. Here we go. This woman, I don't know who she is, but she put it as well as anyone could, addressing the complacency of the people in Florida.
Miami just flipped, for the first time in 30 years, Democrat. Eileen Higgins won the runoff election. I warned you all. So get off your high horses, all of you who fled to red states and are always making fun of the conservatives that live in Los Angeles like me. We cannot flee this. You guys make fun of Gavin Newsom. He's coming to a city near you. And if you don't start turning out the vote, you will all end up blue. It starts little by little, city by city. This is the first time in 30 years. So guess what? You can.
She's not wrong. And people who say this is no big deal will say that the former mayor Suarez was not was not a staunch conservative, and he governed like a squishy Republican and borderline Democrat. That may be true, but at the end of the day, it's still laziness. It's still complacency. 37,000 votes out of 180 or so eligible voters. 180,000 eligible voters. That's pathetic. That's pathetic. And if you continue on this trajectory, she is absolutely right. It will be blue. And then, well, let's just say that would be a disaster.
Have the same homeless encampments and defund the police just like we do. But guess what? At least I have 82-degree weather in the middle of December winter. And you have rain. Get off your high horses. Get to work. Stop being lazy just because you think you're in a red state and you're fine. No, you're not fine. No, you are not fine. DeSantis' term is going to end soon as well. Are you not going to vote and you're just going to assume, oh, they're all going to vote red again? No. You need to vote like you are losing. Every single time. Stop not showing up to local races. The Democrats never sit out elections. Even the smallest little primary, they're always there. They have nothing else to do. And that's why they always win. And you guys didn't read the room and you didn't pay attention. Let me tell you something. The mayor's in charge of giving out stand-down orders to police. You know, that's a problem when you're having a peaceful protest, aka riot.
She's not wrong. She is not wrong. The mayor-elect Eileen Higgins, she beat a Trump-backed candidate. I believe the margin was about 20 points, but when only 36,000 votes were cast, I mean, those aren't huge numbers, but it's still an embarrassing turnout. Embarrassing. Nobody showed up, Republicans or Democrats, and they still lost a seat that they've controlled for 3 decades. Democrats are mobilized, they're hustling, they're organized, and are just, they seem to care more. And I'm not saying that Republicans don't care, but at the end of the day, if you care, get out there and vote. I mean, that's that's not too much to ask. At least it shouldn't be. Especially if you know what's on the other side if you don't vote. If Republicans lose the House, lose the Senate, lose these local elections, and we turn blue in some of these reliably red states, that is going to be a disaster that will take a lot of prayer and decades of work to turn back around, because they will stack the court. They will enact all kinds of ridiculous laws. They may even, if we're not careful, they may get to the point where they'll be able to pass some constitutional amendments. And what? The Democrats have momentum right now. And yeah, it's an off-year election. Yeah, it's going to be the midterms. And it's to be expected that the party in power loses seats and stuff like that. But it doesn't have to be that way, especially given the success that this administration is having right now. And I will grant that they have not been the best at communicating any of those successes. And we just saw President Trump in Pennsylvania trying to turn that around, and that's good. He needs to do that. If he starts doing that, that will go a long way, I think, in turning this around. The fact that they lost this seat that they held for so long, it signals an issue that the Republican machine is rotting, is decaying. And they're going to have to do something to fix that. And that has also been something that the Republicans have long had to deal with, is Democrats have a better machine. Democrats are much better organized, have historically been, I mean, not that they've had their problems, but historically they have been better at messaging, better at communicating, better at persuading, and better at getting out the vote. And they don't need to really win a lot of states outright. They just need to win those urban population centers. I mean, just look at Texas. Houston, Dallas, Austin, and San Antonio. The blue pockets in that gigantic state, which is red everywhere else. And yet they're basically purple at this point, on the verge of turning blue if they're not careful. And had we stayed in Texas, I would be a lot more involved in the political atmosphere there than I had been, because more people need to do that. And I'm going to be more involved here in Arkansas too, because we absolutely cannot let this slide continue. If Republicans don't get it together, it's going to be, as I've said a few times already, it's going to be a disaster. Low turnout is going to be the death of the GOP. Sean says Texas has been purple for a few years now, and it is ignored seemingly. Yeah, it is. There are a few people who are engaged in the fight, but not enough. And I was guilty of that when I was there. I didn't get involved enough. But and so people need to see what's at stake. and figure it out. The Democrats, despite all of their issues, despite all of their nonsense, as I said, they have a well-oiled machine. And Republicans, and I've said this before too, Republicans need to take some lessons from the Democrats. They need to figure out how to how to duplicate that machine that the Democrats have. And it shouldn't be that difficult. It really shouldn't. So if Republicans don't fix this, if they don't figure out how to fight this complacency, if they don't figure out how to start spreading their resources in these local elections, they're going to get steamrolled. And as I said, Jasmine Crockett in Texas doesn't have to win. She just has to lay some groundwork. And the only way to stop that from happening is to get out the vote and steamroll her and make it so that she basically end her political career. Send her packing to CNN or BS Now. But if she has a showing like Afton Bain had in Tennessee and comes within 5, 6, 7 points, they're gonna just like Afton Bain did. They're gonna see that as a victory, and they're gonna see that as momentum building, and it's just gonna go from there. So we got to put a stop to that. We got to put a stop to that. All right. Let's get a word in from our sponsor before we move on, because I got a lot more to talk about, a lot more, and I hadn't planned on talking about jazz hands, so that took up some time. So we'll see if we can speed run through some of the rest of this stuff that we need to address. But the sponsor for today's show is Patriot Mobile. And Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. And now, especially now, more than ever, voting just isn't enough. And we talked about how Republicans seem to be averse to voting a lot of the time. But aside from that, you need to make sure that your money and your resources go to companies that fight for what you believe in. And that's why we switched. We switched to Patriot Mobile. And it has been, we should have done it a lot sooner, honestly, because it has been like night and day compared to we had one of the big three, and they were terrible to deal with. The customer service was atrocious, assuming you could get someone who spoke English. So there's that. And Patriot Mobile is based in Texas, and every time we've called, we've gotten someone who actually speaks English with a Southern accent. But they don't just talk about values that we believe in, they back them up. A portion of every dollar that you spend with them goes to pro-life, pro-family, and pro-freedom organizations. And right now you can get a free month of service when you go to patriotmobile.com and use promo code Jackson, or call 972-PATRIOT and use promo code Jackson. Defend freedom with every call, every text, every month. So switch to patriotmobile.com today, patriotmobile.com/Jackson. All right, y'all. I am Big E, and you are watching or listening to the Mission Ready Men briefing right here on the SHR Media Network, where you can catch my good friend Sackhead Sean, who's in chat, with the Edge of Liberty every Monday and Wednesday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. The Reaver of Common Sense with Jersey Joe. He hasn't been on in a while. He's been focusing on writing some great articles at shrmedia.com. And he's done some bang up work over there. We hope to have him back on the air soon. And when he is, he will be on Monday and Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And BZ with the Berserk Bobcat Saloon every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific. I believe he will be on tonight as well. So be sure to like and subscribe to all those guys' shows, and pray that we have a huge breakthrough. We are at 687 subscriptions. I just looked earlier today. We are at 687. So we have 13 more to get to 700. So please like, subscribe, share, get all your friends to subscribe. We want to hit 700 by the end of the year. So pray for us that we can do that, because we want to reach as many people as we possibly can, because this is no joke. This is serious, and we need to get the word out to as many people as we possibly can. All right, now back to our regularly scheduled programming. And I wanted to talk about this because it's been in the news, and people are talking about it. And the U.S. forces recently, just the other day, seized a Venezuelan oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. And the U.S. Coast Guard, the U.S. Navy, they boarded this vessel and took control of it. And President Trump confirmed that this was done just yesterday, as a matter of fact, December 10th. And so, of course, the left is saying, what authority do we have to do this? Blah, blah, blah. They hate any success that we have. You can break it down to its most simple terms and say that they just hate America, and they do. But the legal authority that we had is that it was engaged in illegal activity. We had sanctions against Venezuela, and it was violating those sanctions by trading oil with Iran and who knows who else. We don't have all the details yet. The vessel that they seized, believed to be the skipper, formerly known as Adisa, and it was sanctioned for illicit oil trading. And they just recently loaded it with heavy crude and registered under a shadow fleet, which has been under scrutiny by us for a long time. And the Navy, the Coast Guard, and Kash Patel and Pam Bondi said that HSI and FBI have been investigating this. And we took it. Good. You violate sanctions, lose your oil. It's that simple. But of course, like I said, the left, they just can't handle that. And even the explanation that they hate America and they don't want to see America succeed, even that is, even though I understand it intellectually, still don't understand how that happened, how they came to hate America so much, how they came to hate the country that has afforded them the opportunity to gain their wealth and their power. It's beyond me. Sackett Chan says, it's almost like some things have consequences. It's so weird. Remember how much money Iran made under Biden, even with sanctions? Well, yeah, of course. It's insane. It really is. And this is not new. This is not new. The United States has previously seized Iranian oil tankers, North Korean oil tankers. And they say that seizing this tanker so close to Venezuelan coast is too aggressive. It's about time. It's about time we got aggressive. And the other thing that we need to keep in mind, the Maduro government is illegitimate. They had an election that he lost, and he just didn't let it happen. He did what they have accused President Trump of doing, of wanting to do. He actually did it. He's not supposed to be in power. So, too bad. Too bad. You want to send drugs to our country? Well, we're going to blow them up. You want to violate our sanctions and trade oil with Iran? We're going to take it. And President Trump said we're going to keep the oil. I don't think we're going to do that. I think we're probably going to auction it off. I mean, there's going to be some legal things that have to happen. They're going to have to go through some asset forfeiture legalities and then auction it off. And then we'll keep the proceeds. Even though I wouldn't be mad if we took it and restocked our strategic oil reserves, but that's just me. Sackhead Sean says, Big E, Maduro is legitimate. I mean, what's one election loss when you're trying to turn the most oil-rich country in South America and turn it into a fourth world country? Well, yeah. I mean, what was I thinking, right? Oh, my goodness. So, of course, illegitimate Maduro is likely going to say that it was a violation of their sovereignty and economic aggression, and maybe even elevated to an act of war. Who knows? But it is a threat to Venezuela's main source of revenue, and that could be a problem for Maduro. He's already been given an ultimatum by President Trump to get out. We'll see if he eventually accepts that. I don't know that he will. The UN is probably going to get involved. The UN, I can't stand the UN. We should have no involvement with the UN. We should kick the UN out of New York and turn that facility into something useful, like housing for veterans, a VA facility, something. But anyway, that's a whole other story. So we took the oil tanker. China and Russia have economic and military ties with Venezuela. And China has bought large quantities of oil from Venezuela. And so this seizure could be interpreted by China and Russia as challenging their energy networks. They did accuse the U.S. of piracy when they stole, that's their word, when they seized that vessel. So we're going to see how this all plays out. I think I am all for it. And let's just be clear. As I said, the Maduro regime is illegitimate. They're in our hemisphere. We should do everything we possibly can to make sure that we are secure on this side of the globe. And if that means pressuring Maduro to leave, so be it. I'm not a huge fan of regime change. I'm wary of ground attacks in Venezuela. I'm not opposed to it if it's for a legitimate reason, but I just want to make sure that it is legitimate reason, and that we don't get ourselves into a war on this side of the globe. You know what I mean? So this is something that we're gonna keep an eye on. Obviously, I don't see Maduro being in power for very much longer, honestly. I don't think that there's going to be. I don't think that we're going to attack Venezuela. At least I hope we don't. Not without at least some a serious, concrete plan in place. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Maduro is going to see the writing on the wall and kick rocks and join what's his name over there in Russia, Assad. I think that's the most likely scenario within the next 2-3 months, especially if we keep seizing their oil and bombing their drug boats. All right. I want to move on because I haven't talked at all yet about what the title of this episode was. And the title of the episode is The Great Apostasy, Faith Fades and Death Fills the Void. And that is in reference to a couple of things that have taken place over the past month or so, one of which I didn't even really know. And as I started looking into it, I found out that it was worse than I even suspected. But we're going to get into that in a minute. But first, I want to talk about this. A Methodist, quote unquote, pastor got up into his pulpit and committed one of the greatest acts of apostasy that I have seen in a long time. One of the greatest, I should say one of the worst. Check this out, because I was blown away. And I really shouldn't have been, especially after I realized it was the Methodist, which we'll get to here in a second. But yeah, check this out.
Not leaving. Hold on to that. I'm going to hold you to it. So rarely do I did not get into ministry to talk about myself or my personal life, but sometimes there are things that happen in a pastor's personal life that is going to find its way out into ministry. And so I am inviting you to join me in a season of creative transformation for myself, and I think for all of us. Imagine, so I get to announce with joy that I'm transitioning. I'm affirming and saying to all of you that I am transgender. And so the best way to put this is that I'm not becoming a woman, I'm giving up pretending to be a man.
Wow. I'm not becoming a woman. Well, you got that part right. You're not becoming a woman. You never will be a woman. I'm giving up pretending to be a man. Oh. Yeah, I can't believe no one stood up and walked out, honestly. But then again, it's a Methodist church, so I can. But anyway, he's making this announcement in the middle of a sermon. I haven't watched the whole thing, but reports are that he was giving a sermon, and then mid-sermon, he takes this left turn and tells everyone that he's mentally ill. Now, the United Methodist Church, they have torn themselves apart in recent years over this idea of clergy standards and sexuality. We'll put it that way. And in 2024, just last year, they removed their ban on alphabet mafia clergy, the LGBTQ clergy. They have allowed people of those persuasions to serve as clergy members in their denomination. And to their credit, conservatives who belong to this church, they broke away after that and formed the Global Methodist Church, which adheres to biblical principles as opposed to this madness. This is not about legislation. This is not about a political statement. This is, from my perspective, this is all about biblical principles. Christians believe that creation is intentional, that there's an order to it. Genesis 1:27 says, so God created man in his own image, in the image of God he created him, male and female created he them. There's no room, there's no ambiguity there. And I know that there are a lot of people who take that word them and try to twist it into to fit their current ideology, which is volume went soft, huh? Well, that's not good. More audio issues. Yay. Well, I will speak up and hopefully it will pass. But anyway, they argue that that a pastor is supposed to model the doctrine that they preach. And what this guy's doing is basically interpreting human embodiment as an accessory that they can change at will. Pastors are supposed to be shepherds and teachers, not self-appointed prophets of personal identity. And you can't call yourself a pastor of a church, of a Christian church, if you're not aligned with biblical teaching. It's not about self-expression. And redefining male and female categories, all that does is just destabilize the church at a time when the church needs to be the most stable entity in the country right now. Christians believe, based on Genesis 1:27, like I just quoted, that men were created in the image of God, the imago Dei. And human identity is based on that, not this internal self-expression. Because what that's saying is that God made a mistake. And that's what this guy did from the pulpit. He basically said, the God that I am up here trying to teach you about, that we are worshiping, made a mistake. I don't know how you call yourself a Christian pastor and then say that the God you're serving made a mistake. Because at that point, he's not God. If you believe that, you're putting yourself on the same level as him. You're saying, I perceive that God made a mistake, and so it's going to be me that corrects that mistake. That is blasphemous. And major life decisions that deal with church doctrine don't get announced mid-sermon in a pulpit. 1 Corinthians 14:40 says, let all things be done decently and in order. And this is disorder on an epic scale. And then the whole thing that he's engaging in is disordered to begin with, and then announcing it in church from the pulpit is wildly disordered. And then if he's doing this in the pulpit, most people you would think would question everything else that he's ever taught. I know I do. If this is his worldview, what is he teaching week in and week out to his congregation? Yeah, today we're going to talk about Romans 10, but before we do that, let me just give you this TED Talk real quick. Worship is about God's identity and your identity in him. And if you're getting up there saying, well, I'm going to try and change how God made me, that's not a confession. That's a brand launch. And this guy's probably, after this, he's probably going to be a brand of somewhat. Because the American prophet is going to elevate him. Nobody knew who he was until now. Now everybody knows who he is. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people, more than did. And even more dangerous than that, what he's doing by trying to redefine himself from the pulpit trains his congregation to view their faith through a therapeutic lens rather than a biblical one. And that is dangerous. That is dangerous. So whether people cheer or cringe at this announcement, there is a very real question that they have to answer. And it's an old question. It's an old question, but the question is, who defines what a human being is? Is it God? Or is it the culture? We know what he thinks. He's wrong. And he's leading his congregation down a very wrong and dangerous path. Speaking of wrong and dangerous, I found this out just by I just happened to see it on my feed, and then I started looking into it, and I couldn't believe what I found out. Illinois wants to be Canada. What do I mean by that? Well, when you think of bold public policy, you think of Chicago crime. You think of collapsing budgets, as with Mayor Mohawk. And now we have in Illinois, or we're about to anyway, death on demand. Illinois lawmakers have, well, back in May, they passed a law that mirrors basically Canada's medical assistance in dying disaster. And they frame it as being about compassion. But basically, it's about the government deciding that it's cheaper to offer a syringe than actual medical care. Now, they basically copied and pasted Canada's MAID and saying that it's a proven model, but it's a medical ethics dumpster fire. Can we trade Illinois for Alberta straight up? I would make that trade in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. Absolutely. And I think there are some people in Alberta that would do that too. Illinois calls it compassion. It's made. It's just killing people for whatever reason. Canada Heavy Hall would. I believe he would. I absolutely believe he would. But what this bill does, it allows terminally ill patients to request life-ending medication with almost no oversight. And because it mirrors Canada's MAID system, advocates of Illinois' version brag about that. They think that's a good thing. And we're going to get into why that is a terrible thing here in a minute. But in committee hearings, they actually openly praised Canada's version. And they think that despite all the successes, quote unquote successes, that Canada has with it, that Illinois can do it better because they have succeeded in so many other areas. Now, the people who actually deal with death day in and day out, coroners, they are pushing back on it. They are saying that it is a terrible idea. And they believe it's a terrible idea because in this bill, and they passed it back in May. The Senate actually just passed it, and it's on the governor's desk now. I wanted to say something, but I refrained. Anyway, coroners will not be allowed to review these deaths. So who's to say that a family member won't administer these drugs when the person isn't ready? And who's to say that if a person has expressed this interest in doing it and they get prescribed the medication, who's to say that someone else doesn't just kill them outright some other way? But because they had this made medication prescribed and they die, no coroner is going to review that, and whoever did it is going to get away with murder. Disability advocates note rightly that it endangers vulnerable people. It's state-sanctioned murder. Some people are saying it's state-sanctioned abandonment, softening the language, but it's state-sanctioned murder, straight up. Straight up. And there's a provision in it that says that a person who applies for this, they have to be they have to have a terminal illness and be given no more than 6 months to live. Anyone see the problem with that? medical technology has made it so that people live for years beyond their 6 months to live prognosis. That's a terrible idea. People who spend their entire careers around death tell you to pump the brakes, maybe you ought to listen. But they didn't, because both the House and the Senate passed it, and it's on Pritzker's desk. They insist that it's safe, that it's responsible. Meanwhile, Canada is basically running a death concierge service for the poor, the disabled, and the depressed. Made, we're going to get to the comparisons here in a second. But, and I've talked about this before with respect to Canada. There was a female veteran who was a Paralympian who asked for assistance to get a wheelchair lift installed in her home. And the first response from the person she spoke to was to suggest MAID. This is a veteran who was a Paralympian, obviously making the best of a bad situation, not at all in any way depressed or suicidal. And rather than try to help this person, they suggested that they die. And you really think that that's not going to happen in this version? Of course it is. Of course it is. Illinois saw that and said, yeah, let's copy and paste this and put this in front of the governor. And of course, that fat leftist is going to go ahead and sign it. I think there's a deadline, and he hasn't signed it yet. But he's going to sign it. I will be shocked if he doesn't, honestly. I will be shocked. And if he doesn't sign it, that to me might signify that he is planning a run at the Oval Office, or in his case, a slow walk. That was mean, I know. I will ask God for forgiveness. But I want to take a look at the comparison, because in Canada, the original promise of MAID was to limit it to terminal diseases only. And what happened was, very quickly, it expanded to people who were in chronic pain, people who had disabilities, people who had mental illnesses, people who were poor. And there were almost no safeguards. Coroners were excluded from reviewing these deaths. People were approved, like I said, due to poverty, homelessness, because they couldn't get services. I talked about the veteran who was offered MAID, and she wasn't the only one. She was not the only one. It was widespread. And even the UN, second. Sean says beaming, yeah. um, even the UN, of all entities, has raised objections to this. That shocked me. That shocked me. There are over 13,000 MAID deaths in Canada, and it rises every year. MAID is now the third biggest killer in Canada. Third. State-sponsored murder in Canada, third biggest killer. And in Illinois, the proposed copy-paste law that is almost certainly going to get signed into law is supposed to be, it was pitched as compassionate. It was pitched as giving people a choice, giving people dignity. And it is functionally identical to Canada's MAID system. No coroner oversight. So-called advocacy groups are pushing it everywhere. And of course, it's Illinois, and so it's a bastion of leftism, and so their political establishment is all in on it. Medical professionals, coroners, disability groups, they all oppose it. Religious organizations all oppose it, as they should. And because it shares, because it's basically a copy paste of Canada's version, it is going to have the exact same trajectory. It is going to expand. It is going to expand to people who have mental illness, people who are depressed, people who are in chronic pain, homeless, poverty. It's going to follow the exact same trajectory. It's not about compassion versus suffering. It's about care versus convenience. You think that person in Canada suggested MAID because that was the best option? Or because she wanted to get this woman off the phone and didn't want to expend any resources to help this person? Which one do you think is most likely? Canada chose convenience and made death a viable alternative to fixing a broken system because it's cheaper. And Illinois is just marching right along with a smile, following the exact same path. When government decides that you are too expensive to keep alive, that's not compassion. That is the exact opposite of compassion. That is cost cutting with a syringe. Unbelievable. And yet at the same time, very, very believable. All right. That is all we got for you right now. I want to I want to get into this because Chris Murphy is one of the dumbest people in Congress. I mean, he's getting a run for his money from jazz hands, Jazzy Crockett for sure. And Eric Swalwell is right up there. Ted Lieu is another one. They're all equally stupid. And I think Ted Lieu may even be a little bit dumber. Sackhead Sean says, I could end the Chris Murphy statement right there and it would be 100% factual. Yeah. But Chris Murphy, let's take a look at this. Chris Murphy accidentally blames Biden for rising costs by sharing unfortunate graphs. And he posted this. And, you know, let's see if I can get the full graph here. Yeah, let's go with this one. And we'll go back to the other tab in a second. But he posted this graph about electricity prices, trying to blame President Trump. And at first glance, if you're not paying attention, like look at that and say, oh, wow, that's crazy. But then you look here. Who was president between 2020 and 2024? Wasn't that long ago? I'll give you a second to guess. Yeah. It was Joseph Robinette Bribin. And so it was a, yeah, here we go, look at this. That was a self-own by him of epic proportions. And this tweet actually caught my eye. Well, this one. Yep, all Biden. But this right here, I don't know who this person is, but their tweet, is it too much to ask that elected officials not be stupid? And he highlighted Trump years, Biden years, and then Trump. He is a moron. And I don't know how, of course, the American Pravda is not going to call him out on this. Robinette never gets old. No, I'll never forget the first time I heard his middle name. I didn't know what to say. But anyway. He's an idiot. He is a complete idiot. And I know that the American Pravda is not going to pick up on this and call him out on it. Jake Tapper slapping around figuratively, Jasmine Crockett notwithstanding. That's an exception, not the norm. And so this is just going to get swept under the rug unless we keep it alive. And I propose that we all retweet this, share it, and keep it alive, because it needs to be one of those things that is front and center in this election cycle coming up. They talk about the affordability problem and how prices are out of control, even though they're coming down. But they have to keep in mind it was the Democrats that caused this problem. Democrats caused this problem. Chris Murphy and his ilk caused this problem. And now they want to blame President Trump, and we can't let them get away with it. It makes you wonder if the old Dems got to Jake and begged him to hammer Jazzy on there to try and send a message. Maybe. It's not outside the realm of possibility. But anyway, y'all, that's all I got for you this time. I will keep trying to make each episode better than the last one. If any of what I said hit home for you, please take a second to like and subscribe. We are at 687. We'd like to get 700 by the end of the year. So please share it with everyone that you know, because I'm not just here to run my mouth into the ether. I am here to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ and the banner of faith, freedom, and hope for future generations. And if you want some cool gear like this shirt, head over to missionreadymen.com, click Shop 7 Armors, and check out all of the great designs that we have over there about bold faith, true grit, and unapologetic patriotism. And as always, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away, but the Lord is right there with you. So keep your prayers going up and your head on a swivel. God bless.